Let's just put this on the table, Ken. The most traumatized, the most mistreated, most despised ethnic group or racial classification is the black male. And from slavery to today, advocacy for black males is woefully lacking. And we allow the media to determine what the hot issue is. So they decide, well, during the height of the civil rights movement, the women's issue became the hot issue because the media said it was. Oh, we tired of dealing with this whole black thing. Let's move on to something else. Then they talking about Black Lives Matter. We tired of this Black Lives Matter thing. Let's move on to something else.
Correct.
The problem of race has not been solved. Look, folks, everybody listen out there. Let me give you this word, wherever you are. The issue of race has not been solved in America yet.
We're going to continue the conversation of Brother Can We Talk with Judge Michael Nelson. We're going to talk social justice. And what does that all mean? We're going to dive deep into the conversation, though, how social justice and the justice system right here in Cleveland, Ohio, is affecting the African-American male and what the judge has been doing himself to try to change it in his own way. So this Sunday, 3 o'clock, check out Strategic Moves with Ken Dow. And don't forget, we're getting closer to that live podcast, September 21st, over at A Touch of Italy.
This is Strategic Moves with Ken Dow.
Hey, what's up, everybody? You tuned in to another episode of Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Ken Dow, and today we're going to continue our series on Brother Can We Talk? And we're going to do that today with none other than Judge Michael Nelson. He's going to talk today about social justice. Judge Nelson.
Good afternoon, Ken. How are you today?
I'm doing good, man. Like I said, yesterday we kicking off our series, man. I'm all excited. We're getting ready to get this thing going with African-American males and brothers. Can we talk? We're going to sit down and have discussions with people in our community about issues that are affecting us as African-American males. And today we got you on to talk about social justice. You're a good person to talk social justice with. You've been out in our community for years, beating the path on trying to do what's right for everybody here, especially African-American males, with 100 black men and other organizations that you've been in the past. And now you are a judge sitting in municipal court. And to some degree, we wish you would have been a judge early on because you may have saved a few of us, but also going in the latter years gave you an opportunity to go in there because you at a point where you can just set precedents and walk out the door. So
well, that's true. That is true. And Ken, the fight for social justice has been a long, long fight. In fact, I think every Memorial Day we should talk about the longest war that's been engaged in the United States. And that is the fight for social justice and civil rights for black people. That's the longest war, and it's not even close to being over. We didn't become free. People talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. They talk about Juneteenth. We didn't become free as black people until August 6, 1965. Now, people look at me and say, what do you mean by that? We couldn't vote in this country without restriction until the Voting Rights Act was passed, and it was passed August 6th of 1965. That's when we got full citizenship.
Really?
And it's not been that long. It's been about 55 years.
You're right, because I was born in 67.
That's right.
So, it was just happening right around the time I was being born.
So when we talk about social justice, there's nothing more important. We're the only unemancipated people in our own country.
Wow.
And that not only do we have to fight to get the Voting Rights Act passed in 65, but now we're in a fight to maintain voting rights, which means that we're in a constant battle when it comes to social justice for black people.
Well, and I believe as it gets to voting rights, how it's affect us as African-American males is that apathy and going through that process was African-American males were already one of the ones who suffered it the most. Because in that time of things we changing over and things transitioning, as you say, voting rights to just black people in general, that's male or female, right? Now we're just getting that. Then around that time, they started coming up with social programs for the community to say, hey, we need to start to help African-American families and that kind of thing. But if you are married, if you have a husband or someone living in your household, you cannot get these little bitty crumbs that they were going to be giving you in the first place. And what did most people do? They kicked their men out the house. And some of them didn't kick them out. It was just a process of what everybody knew. And everybody in the hood knew about it. Everybody knew it was a common thing. There was generations that grew up in that kind of situation. And not only with women, but even the men who were in those relationships grew up in there knowing that, hey, I might hook up with somebody and this might be a role that I may have to play if I'm not able to be the serious breadwinner or that guy in our household. And so I think that affected us a lot as well.
And that was a violation of the woman's right to privacy. She should be able to maintain her household in a manner that is most beneficial to her. So now, what happened when men were forced out of those homes because of the restrictions placed on them by various agencies? One, it meant women now had the dual burden of not only being mother, but also being father. So what people thought was a good idea turned out to be a terrible idea because it created this imbalance.
A serious imbalance, because it's a mental thing that people not understand. It's a mental thing when someone makes you feel as if that's not your place. It's not your home, it's my home. And it really wasn't their home. They renting it and they getting Social Security or welfare or whatever they were getting. But you kick the male out the house. When he leaves, then you might, as in some cases, you might as well stay gone. It helps separate them from their family. And that was a form of this social justice that I think affected African-American men in a real big way. And it definitely divided the family and it tore the family apart.
It's a form of social injustice because it created this dichotomy where the man couldn't be comfortable in the house to which his significant other had agreed to try to maintain.
Correct.
So the man had to then sneak around.
Correct.
And the women had to conceal and tell the kids, well, don't say nothing about your dad being in the house.
Correct.
So it's just an example of the minds of some people who perceiving these good things, they do it without consulting the people for whom they are trying to do the good thing for. And that's why it's important for us to be, as you and I were just talking about the play Hamilton, it's always good to be in the room when it happens.
Correct. Correct.
We had men in the room when it happens that actually experienced this that may not have occurred.
Yeah, because we're talking about welfare, we're talking about just how people get along and get through. Then we move to the African-American male having to deal with just the regular criminal element of the imbalance of justice, where we see all of these killings and things that are going on. I was talking with some friends of mine, and we was talking about Black Lives Matter. And these African-American folks, man, they was just like, all lives matter. I was like, no, Black Lives Matter too. All lives matter. And I wasn't on the kick of saying that I'm on this Black Lives Matter thing and let's go. But what they were saying, well, I believe that when we stop killing each other. Well, I don't think that that's another part of breaking us apart and not us coming together. We have to all come together to understand that, yes, we believe all lives matter, but we also need to take a special look at us and try to figure out what it is about us. And that's not to say, hey, I'm going to follow us when we stop doing this. It's to say, what can we do right now to kind of get it? So you are a man on the ground. I know you can say what you can and can't what you can't, but the social justice, Mike, and trying to get us together, man, what's up?
Well, when people say all lives matter, that's a generic response to a specific problem that you can't connect with. So instead of dealing with the specifics of Black Lives Matter and the context in which that phrase came about, because we were being killed by police officers when we weren't committing a crime. White folks, under the same circumstances, got arrested and prosecuted. We, on the other hand, were shot and killed or choked out before we had been accused of any crime. Let me give an example. We've had people who've been stopped by the police, and the best one is Melissa Williams and Timothy Russell. They were stopped in East Cleveland. They were not committing a crime when they were shot and killed. The crime was over. They were sitting there in surrender mode when they were shot and killed. White people, on the other hand, who had committed mass murders, were approached by police and allowed to surrender so they could be properly processed and or prosecuted. Tim and Melissa were not a threat. They were just sitting in the car, surrounded by dozens of police officers when their lives were taken. That is one of the clearest distinctions and one of the responses when people say all lives matter. No, they don't. Because if all lives mattered, those two black people and others in their position would not be dead today. White folk, like Dylan Roof and others who had committed mass murders, their lives mattered more even though they actually killed somebody.
And killed a lot more.
Melissa and Tim killed nobody.
Right.
They harmed nobody.
Right.
So to all my good friends who want to use the phrase all lives matter, stop telling that lie and face the facts that white lives matter much more than black lives.
And it's been that way. Here's another way of how they do it is I was talking to Councilman Conwell, and he was telling me how in certain cases when he was on the safety committee, and he's on it now, but over the years he's been on it, how police officers would come into a person's home where there's a dispute between a man and a woman, and they would come into their home and they kind of belittle the male right off the rip. They'll say, hey, you go sit down. If you stand up again or get up or say something, we taking you to jail. And they belittle them in front of their kids, in front of the mothers. And everything. Now, again, if you got a violent guy that's sitting at the house beating up the wives and all of that, I get that. But in some cases where there's arguments or people just getting out, because right now, let's face it, everybody is walking around on 10 and we don't have enough police officers to deal with that. So with that being the case, and I'm gonna throw this one out here, I believe that a lot more brothers get arrested. In that particular case, they end up going downtown. They end up picking up one of these old crazy old felonies, go to anger management classes and all these other things that they make them go through. The female, on the other hand, is at home, who could have probably had some of the same anger management problems, same anger issues, because if the brother's coming home and he's angry about what's going on at work and he's barely making it, you at home dealing with the same stuff and you dealing with the head on and ain't making it. So when y'all get together, it's nothing but a powder keg of argument and just can't get along. And when the police get involved, they come in and they take the brother right back out the house. Back to what we were saying again, they take the brother right back out the house. And when they take him out the house in front of his kids, in front of his family, and do all of that to him, barely he loses his job because he's locked up in jail and he's on these classes and on probation. Again, I think with this justice system, or they call this justice, is another avenue of why African-American males are in this position. So, Mike, what do you think we can do to save these brothers, man?
Well, oftentimes in a domestic dispute situation, and we use the word domestic violence, it covers a lot of territory. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about those instances when actually no violence is taking place.
Okay.
Right. A menacing. I don't know how many times, Ken, and you and I have argued and we've threatened to kick each other's behind.
Correct.
Often.
Right.
We don't plan on kicking each other's behind. We just having a conversation.
Correct.
And after we finish the conversation, we get off the phone and go about our business. Mm-hmm. A menacing occurs when there's some tension in the house. That one individual in the house may make a threatening comment to the other person in the house. The police arrive. And in some of those cases, it's just a matter, and this is where experienced police come in. It's just a matter of separating the people for a few minutes, letting them calm down, find out what went on, and letting them calm down and saying, okay, well, look,
right.
Why don't you go stay at your cousin Willie's house today?
Mm-hmm.
And the situation deflates. So we talk about de-escalation between police officers and people. Sometimes the police officers need to apply de-escalation skills to the people to whom they're responding. Mm-hmm. Because you get down in court and they get changed. Mm-hmm. The other thing we have to do is make sure that we acknowledge the fact that, as you've just said earlier, there's a lot of tension. Mm-hmm. There's tension because people are lost, they're losing their job.
Right.
They can't even travel. They can't separate. Mm-hmm. There's no room for them to just calm down, and this tension blows up, and some minor incidents become major incidents. Not there's any physical danger, but the one person or the other picks up a crime. And then you have the infamous TPO, which is then issued, the temporary protection order, that some people don't understand is called temporary for a reason. Some people don't understand that temporary can just be until the situation calms down.
Right.
And once the issue is discussed, the attorneys have some time to discuss it, the temporary protection order could actually be dissolved because the people have calmed down and whatever circumstance precipitated that particular conflict, even if the case hasn't been resolved yet. Because the case gets resolved when the time allows it to get resolved. But the issue is probably resolved a lot sooner. Same thing with putting these bracelets on people, these monitors on people. I've seen monitors on people for 6 months. Now, the issue ended probably 14 days. Everybody was cool while the protection order, the no contact order was still in place. They didn't need the bracelet. They don't still need the monitor. The situation has resolved itself. So we need citizens organizations, advocacy group. When I say advocacy, there are a lot of advocacy groups, but they're sort of one-dimensional. We need advocacy groups to actually look at the circumstance, say, okay, we're going to provide counseling, to the two parties.
Why can't government do that, though? Isn't it easier for government, and when I say government, the city, the county, or these guys, provide that type of service for it? Because in the long run, it's cheaper for them.
It would be, but Ken, just take a look at what we've been dealing with the last 4 years. We've been dealing with mass incarceration. We're just getting to where we're making bonds reasonable or not issuing bonds at all.
Well, that was you. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You just said, I'm not doing it. Let's talk a little bit about that. You stopped doing bonds down there.
Well, some of the bonds, violent bonds and cases where there's high levels of violence are appropriate. But you don't need somebody to have to post a bond for driving on suspension or posting a bond for drug trafficking or having weapons under disability. Those are situations where you can give a person a citation, a court date, and tell them, see you later. Because otherwise, people can't make bonds if they don't have jobs. And we are the poorest city in the poorest county, in the poorest region in the entire United States, a major American city.
Correct.
Which means we have more unemployment. And in the urban community, that unemployment is either higher and that poverty is even more severe. So a bond is almost like a sentence. It's almost like a sentence, and it's unnecessary. So when I looked at the backgrounds and how bond was being applied, I said, it's just time to send a message. You don't need to be in jail for 4 or 5 days on a traffic ticket. It just makes no common sense. And there'll be people who say, we don't get bonds on that. You kept them in jail for 3 days until that case get resolved. You should have given them a ticket and sent them on home. So a bond doesn't have to be actually written as a bond. The process serves as a bond and serves as a form of incarceration, which causes people to lose jobs.
Correct.
Which causes people to lose housing. So you hit something around the head. Though looking at justice that way costs more because it makes your jails overcrowded.
Correct.
It strains your staff, limits your resources.
And it puts the tension back out in the community.
Back on the family.
And put back on the family, where if government want to help the family, which it says they're helping them with welfare, Section 8, and all the things that they give you all the rules to tell you how to break your family up. It should be a way that government should be able to tune into that. And that was one of the things that Bashir Jones campaigned on. And I was hoping throughout the process, the others, and they started off picking up on it, where they said that there need to be another unit. I was at 55th and Carnegie the other day, man. And it was an ambulance parked over there, and it was 2 police cars. And it was 2 white officers out, and it was a black lady out there with a T-shirt on. Just a T-shirt, Mike. That's all I'm saying, right?
Okay.
She had a T-shirt on. She was sitting on the sidewalk, and she had some kittens with her.
Okay.
And I saw the police cars there first because we had to move because the ambulance is coming. And so when they pulled over to the side, I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, these cops got their hands full with this one. And I'm there thinking like, this is all mental health. This is all mental health. And she was talking and she was real normal and everything with them. Soon as she saw that ambulance pull up, she grabbed those kittens, man. I saw her hair squaring and she was doing, I said, ooh, they're about to have a tough day. So I understand. And I thought about that then, was like right there was where we were talking about that unit. Right. I know they standing there and they looking at her like, this black woman standing here in her T-shirt. I don't know if she had underwear on or not underneath all of that. But all I know, Mike, she had a T-shirt on, she had 2 kittens, and she was sitting on the sidewalk.
Obviously, there's an issue. And one thing we have to recognize is that everybody does not have the same skill sets. That's obviously needed some mental health professional to assist in. Because all the police can do is say, well, look, we got to get you off the street.
Correct.
Okay, but if a mental health professional was accompanying them, then the circumstances of that particular encounter, and in this case, I hope it turned out okay.
Right.
But it would be much more likely that it would turn out well as opposed to turning out
because bad. The police mentality is purely that even if it was they're not gonna let her go. We're here now. Either you getting in this ambulance and they're gonna take you to the hospital, or you gonna do something stupid enough to piss one of us off pretty soon here, and we gonna throw the cuffs on you and take you to jail. That's the only outcome in that situation for her. And in reality, she probably wasn't doing nothing to nobody but sitting on the thing needing help. Right. But that's where I'm at.
And see, our reality, somebody's going to object to what we're going to say next, but our reality is that there are a lot of mental health issues in this county.
Correct.
Now, somebody was waiting for me to say in this city. This county, which incorporates this city, and it's directly related to, you got lead paint issues, you got all this pollution, you have food deserts, you have diet issues. We have a hell of a brew here, and it results in some significant mental deficiencies or impairments.
No doubt.
So that's one of the realities.
So at some point or another, like I say, I believe that hopefully Mayor Bibb, Blaine Griffin, those guys over there, they understand that with the Adams Board and the county being that agency that's supposed to really work, it has to be something. We come up with task force for everything. You know, you had a gang task force. You had all these different task force. You would think that they would put some type of task force together to try to help deal with the mental health issue. And that right there will help all of us in our community. But we do also know that us as brothers really need a helping hand on those things.
Yeah, and let's just put this on the table, Ken. The most traumatized, the most mistreated, most despised ethnic group or racial classification is the black male. And from slavery to today, advocacy for black males is woefully lacking. And we allow the media to determine what the hot issue is. So you know, they decide, well, during the height of the civil rights movement, the women's issue became the hot issue because the media said it was. Oh, we tired of dealing with this whole black thing. Let's move on to something else. Then they talking about Black Lives Matter. We tired of this Black Lives Matter thing. Let's move on to something else.
Correct.
The problem of race has not been solved. Look, folks, everybody listen out there. Let me give you this word, wherever you are. The issue of race has not been solved in America yet. So that's why we spend some time, stay on that until we solve the problem of race and racial discrimination. Let's do that, because it has not been solved yet. All right? Let's don't move on until we solve that problem.
And that being the case, just like you say, African-American males being the center of that.
Right.
Is the biggest problem that we have in our community. So now we done put out there and we understand that that's our issue. Mike, what we do about it?
We need to organize. Black men, now here's the contradiction. We have a number of black male groups, fraternities, Masonic groups, ministerial groups, social organizations. If we could all stop pretending like because we're in our group that all the black man's problem is solved until one of our members of our group gets either shot, arrested, or violated one way or the other with destruction of reputation. If we would sit down together and say, we want to impact this mass incarceration, we want to make sure that black men get in some of these positions of authority, leading some of these agencies that actually determine solutions to the problems that black men face, we're going to continue to have black male problems. So fraternities, Masonic groups, pastoral groups, let's convene to sit down to talk about how we solve the issues of black men. Now, let me be more specific, because you're going to be saying, what are the issues? Unemployment is a major issue. Discrimination is a major issue. Injustice is a huge issue, where black men get more time and longer probations than any other classification. Let's agree to that, and let's put a stop to it.
So that I'm glad you mentioned that, Judge, because one of the things that we're planning on doing, and I wanted to use this podcast to kind of kick it off. I guess we all get to this point when we get around this age, because I guess you was pretty close to this age when you went through this, and you started 100 Black Men, and you got going with that because you felt there was a need of what was going on in the city at that time, that back then, that you felt that we wasn't doing enough to assist African-American males in trying to make it to that next level. And that's when 100 Black Men, you went out and you got information about that organization and you bought it here and you founded that organization here. So what I would like to do is that, you know, from my experience of things, I like to tell people is that, you know, had an opportunity to work on all these great campaigns and did everything. And I went to D.C. with Chantel. I got a chance to see her get sworn in. And I looked at her when I was sitting up there in the top of the Capitol, just looking at everything. I watched Fudge walk in and how everybody admired her and looking at her handle her business and doing her thing. And I'm watching Chantel and watched her do her first speech, man. And I sat there and I thought about, like, damn, man, what are you going to do? All right, you going back home, you done did this, you done really did everything politically that you feel you want to do. I done worked on everybody's campaign. I mean, presidents, I mean, not one, few of them. And just record stack. So what are you going to do? Congresswoman Marsha, she's often going, she's secretary, you going to go work at HUD? You know, I ain't working at HUD. You see that. Not about to, you know, Chantel, love her to death, but I did that for 12 years with Marsha. So it was like, what are you going to do? And so I started this podcast and I got going with that. And then it dawned on me, man, that as I started working and started talking more and more about things, man, is that I'm going to use the rest of my time I got left, man, to really try to help these brothers. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard because of everything we say. But what I want to do is that I want to be able to do my part. And my part is that I'm an organizer by trade. I don't know the answers to all of that's why I'm talking to you and bringing other people on and going to continue to do that till we get some type of answers or something that sticks. But what I do want to do is be able to put us all on a digital platform where we all can communicate. All those organizations and various different people, we're going to all be able to be on one platform where we can communicate, give ideas, do webinars and things of that nature. And we're going to do that as we start to develop out this podcast. So the work you did is good work, Mike, and always good work. And I'm going to follow in your footsteps along those lines and trying to continue to help do something with these brothers out here.
Well, my biological father was killed when I was 2 years old. So I never got to know him. But my mother, fortunately, met another good man, O.C. Reed, and he provided what I would have missed. A lot of our men didn't have that insurance policy, so to speak. So they grew up without their dads, without a father in the house. But I also was fortunate to, at an early age, have Jim Hardiman, George Forbes, Arnold Pinckney, Reverend Donald Jacobs, Luther Towers. I mean, I can go through a whole list of men that were mentors to me. Russell Adrian, when I got ready to take the bar exam, I was a rabble-rouser in college and in school. When I got ready to take the bar exam, and you had to fill out the character and fitness, I was working at RTA doing my internship, went in to see Russ Adrian, who was Judge Ron Adrian's father, and gave him my paperwork, said, boss, we need to sort of get this paperwork. He took the paper and tore it up and threw it in the trash. He said, we got some work to do. We got some cleaning up to do. And I thought I was ready. He said, no, son, I know you. He tore it up, took care of some of my background stuff, cleaned it up, and bam, passed the bar, went about my business. And I want to say this about Marshall Fudge, too. I used to work at the Glenville Development Corporation, and I used to bellyache every September that I wasn't in law school. When I graduated from Central State, I had a child, and I had to come home and work. I taught school, but I really wanted to go to law school. Like my grandfather had gone to law school. And Ron Adrian's dad was a lawyer. Parker Adrian's dad was a lawyer. And I said, shoot, I want to be a lawyer. That was my plan. One night after one of our meetings, I'm talking, and Marcia Fudge and Dr. Michelle Spain heard me bellyaching for the umpteenth time about not being in law school. They said, go to law school somewhere. Don't come back until you in somebody's law school. That next week is April of 1986. I went down to Cleveland State. Said, I don't want to go here. Went up to Case. Long story short, I was in school that August. I did not apply to go to law school until April of 1986, and I was at Case in school in August of 1986.
Wow.
And Marcia Fudge and Dr. Michelle Spain sort of opened that door. And then again, made sure I had a job while I was in law school.
Yeah, you told me, so you work, what, third shift?
I would work for the Glenville Development Corporation. I would go in third shift. They didn't have but one shift.
That's what I'm saying. They only had one shift and you worked third shift.
Third shift, yeah. And the police would see me these flashlights in these houses, and they come up and say, what is going on? And they say, oh, it's you. That's right. You work, because I got to know some of the police. So I'd be inspecting houses at midnight. But see, when the Lord has something for you, he got something for you. And you can't even mess it up yourself if you want to.
Well, you know what, Mike? I was the same way. I didn't grow up with a father at all. But growing up, especially back then where you had a community that was a community, there were several people in my life that had fathers that I was just friends with, that their fathers looked out for me. Just even on the street. It was times that, and it wasn't always that way. It was maybe some years I was hanging out with this guy, some years throughout my life though. So let me ask you this. What advice do you have to give to the young brothers or just the brothers in general in trying to maneuver through this social justice or through this justice system and everything?
Fellas, if you see somebody you admire, approach them. I was not shy about approaching people. And my political pedigree and chops came from not because I was invited to the party. I invited myself into some doors. I was too old for the young generation and too young for the older generation. I just attached myself to the guys at the Carnegie Round Table.
Correct.
I was the youngest person. They used to eat lunch with Stanley Tolliver and Bill Crockett and all those guys, Charlie Bibb and Dick Perry. I just attached myself to them. So if you see somebody that you admire, just go up there and approach them. Folks call me in my courtroom and say, look, man, this young boy is trying to talk to you. He admires you, thinks you'd be a great mentor. You're going to have to spend 5 minutes with him. Call me, and we'll hook you up with him. The other thing is our generation. Like I said, I was fortunate to have people just say, okay, he's either going to be a pest or I'm going to have to get to know this young boy. And that's what happened. We need to reach back to the extent we can and share with these young guys. And so they're not always going to listen to you, but at least be willing to share with them your experience. And old heads, we have to be willing to relinquish some of our authority. When I was president in ACP, the leadership I replaced was in their 80s. I said right then that whoever replaces me is going to be in their 30s. And Danielle Sitnor and them have done a great job. And I've said, all of us old heads, we're going to be around to advise, but we're going to get out the way so they can blossom and do their thing.
So let's stay on that point, because I'm about to piss off them too, because that's my thing here these days. How can we get more brothers in those leadership roles, Mike? And I don't have a problem. I'm going to always use this disclaimer when I'm on this program and during this series. I do not have a problem with the sisters. Y'all know that. and I done worked a lot of times with a lot of strong women, and I go to the meetings, man, and women sitting in the meetings. Y'all get it done. So I'm not against that, but I am about trying to get brothers. And I'll give you a perfect example. We're putting together this event, and we're going to do the panel discussion that we talked about. And when I did it, I put a shout out on Facebook. Hey, I'm looking for an event planner to help me put it together, hoping that I say I'm going to get a brother that's going to come in and help me get this thing right, and we're going to put this thing together. Not that I got a problem with the sisters, because I know they could do it, but brothers, we need to step up, all right? That's what we're going to do. And maybe it's just brothers who don't do this type of work. That's the case. But no brothers showed up. I did get one brother to show.
Greg Cameron, did you hear what Ken Dow just asked for? Greg Cameron, where are you? Greg Cameron, show up. Respond to Ken Dow. You know how to plan stuff. Arnold Hines, respond. You know how to plan stuff. Y'all gave some of the best parties ever, and you can plan events. So show up.
Nobody showed up. Then the one brother who did show up, I ain't going to play him out because he did show up. Okay. But when he showed up, he brought 2 women with him.
Now, there's a reality. See, the problem I have is not that women are doing their thing. Men, you're going to have to stop being shy.
Right.
For example,
that's what I'm saying.
There have been a number of positions that have been filled by women, some black, some white women. We ain't even applying. It may be because we don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
But apply, and then let some other brothers know you're applying. And brothers, when you know another brother's applying, support the brother who's applying. Don't look for every flaw that he has.
Right.
Support the brother who's applying. One thing women don't, they will target something and say, we want a woman in it.
Right.
And they will not pick the woman's flaws out. They will cover those flaws up and say, hey, yes, that may be true, but we're going to work with her.
They work with her. They say we're going to work with her. I done watched them do it time. That's what I'm saying. It's not a knock against women at all. Yeah. They got their stuff together. I'm just saying at some point or another, we got to get ours. If not, we're going to just keep saying the same old stuff over and over again.
And let's be more specific. I hope no one's offended by this, but I've seen certain white women and certain white men retread every important position.
Correct.
And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have the opportunity, but they're not the smartest.
Correct.
Or the most capable. What they have is a connection here and there, and that connection steps up for them, and they've fallen flat on their collective faces. So what I'm saying to you is, brothers, apply for some of these positions and let other men know you're applying for them, people that are confident and are in positions where they want to apply for the job you're applying for. But let them know so we can build a momentum around you. Because it's like this, all right, first name we got, they'll name a name, and they'll put that person in that position, okay? And they didn't do squat in the previous position, but they knew somebody.
Right.
So we have to start building our cadre of individuals, and we have to be bold enough to let people know you're applying for that position so you can get considered. 'Cause I know some dynamic brothers out here that are far more skilled than people who have been appointed to various and sundry positions over social service agencies and other agencies.
And it used to be that thing where they'll say, well, the brothers went to make the money, so therefore they didn't go for those particular jobs. That's not even the case either. Some of them just don't go. A lot of these elected positions and things. Remember that time when all those female judges that you have on the bench right now all came in one block at one point and another. Right. They all decided that we need more African-American women on the bench.
Right.
And we're about to do something about it. And they put 4 or 5 of them on at one time.
Right.
One time.
Right. And see, when we started the 100 Black Men, we knew there was a need to promote men's issues. Now, over the years, with some leadership changes, that sort of fell apart. But they now have leadership that's strong. You have Lee Fields in position. And the people who are in the executive committee understand that their focus is to not only mentor, but there's another side to mentoring. See, some of our other leadership understood the mentoring part, but you also have to be an advocate so you can open doors for the people you are mentoring.
That's correct. That's correct.
So for you guys that are here in the corporate community, don't get so puffed up in the fact that you've accomplished what you need to accomplish. Remember, you are also obligated to mentor and then fight to open doors for the people you are mentoring. And that's what the 100 is about, and that's what I hope my fraternity and Masonic groups and other social service agencies that service black men will adopt, so they can open some doors to get qualified African Americans can get employment. And see, right now, the only place a qualified African American man can go get something is in the government. But we need some private sector. We need some of these social service agencies, and there are enough of you out there that know what I'm talking about, where we need some black men in those executive rooms.
And if there is some social service agencies that want to come on and talk to us about their stuff that they have, programs that you have, not just for African-American males, but for anybody. We're a community-based program that we're trying to get this word out to them.
Let's take that another point. If you have a spot that's open right now and you look at your suite of executives and you don't see any black men in it, call Ken Dow and come on the show and tell him why, and also tell him how you're going to alleviate that. Because when I was in law school, one of the things a pet peeve I had, the class of blacks at Case, and when I graduated, was a small class. But we had a whole lot of people from other countries. So I went and approached them. How is it you can find people 6,000 miles away to come to law school? You can't find any within this county.
Right.
We got to do something about that.
Exactly.
So Jackie Chisholm called me one day and said, Mike, we're going to do something about this. When she was
over there. So let me ask you this question. Why we on these organizations, and you know, one of the things I always crack up on this show, when we get old, man, when we get it, we got to say it before we forget it, right?
That's true.
So let me get you on this point. You know, on this point, man, with these folks that are expungements that are happening with the city of Cleveland, I know the mayor talked about him and Blaine went over there with boxes of all these names and stuff that they said they were going to get expunged. I know that's one thing, but regular expungements of just trying to get people in general. What do you know about that, or what can we give our audience out here that's listening some tips on maybe trying to get something together so you can go to that next level?
Well, the administration is trying to expunge all those marijuana convictions.
Okay.
But they had to take it and do it a little differently. So we're going to do some dismissals and we're going to do some expungements, because you have to have the person to do the expungement. But we're going to do some dismissals through the court in conjunction with the mayor and the council person. And in fact, Judge Michelle Early is spending hours signing dismissals.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you get 2 double misdemeanors and some felonies can be expunged. Call the public defender's office. Let me give you the phone number right now. Take your time, folks. I'll let you get a pen and pencil while Ken and I sort of reminisce about all the battles we've had and what we've experienced. And how we've been through some battles, but always come out, the community is better off and our friendship and relationship is solidified. The number to the public defender's office is 216-443-2190. 216-443-2190. And they will prepare the applications for you and process your motions for expungement. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win them all, but at least that's the starting point.
That's a starting point, and that's basically what we needed to do, and we want to try to give the guys a starting point. Tell me, man, you've been around long enough. How do you think they failed us the most as African-American males?
Well, one of the worst things that happened from the state was when they closed all the mental health facilities. As if people didn't need those services. They did need them, and they needed the facilities. Now, the facilities, they cost lots of money. But as part of the cost cutting, we created a bigger problem than we solved. That's at the state level. One other thing the state has failed to do was support Central State University. It's only publicly supported historically black college in the state of Ohio. State should have said, here's $75 million in order to make sure that you have all the resources, et cetera, that you need. And to the community, Central State is not run by a bunch of black people living in Cleveland. It is one of 14 state universities. Ohio State, Ohio University, University of Cincinnati, Youngstown State, Kent State, Central State is one of the 14 publicly supported universities in the state of Ohio. It's not a school run by a bunch of black people, contrary to what you all think, okay? It's one of the family of 14 publicly supported four-year institutions. In the city, I believe the last administration, I have no idea what their thoughts were about building community wealth and protecting the rights of our community.
Expound.
The biggest thing that the previous city administration did, and it started with Mike White too, they took away the citizens' right to vote on school board members. Okay, I think that's the biggest failure that we've had, and the county's biggest failure was when we allowed the county, the leadership in our community, the corporate community, to kill off and turn our government over from the commissioners over to a single county executive, which has been an unmitigated, full-fledged, ongoing cluster. I can't use the last word, disaster. But you all know the word that should follow cluster. This has been an unmitigated disaster, and it's also impacted voter turnout, and it's damn sure impacted service delivery. I think we are suffering in our community from that. Those three things, I believe, have been the most devastating issues to hit our community.
Hey, Judge, I really appreciate you coming on here. As you know, we're going to have a big panel discussion. We're going to have you out there. I'm asking everybody to please leave comments in the comment section. If you got questions you would like to ask Judge, please leave those questions. When we do our panel discussion there at Touch of Italy, we're going to ask the Judge those questions at that time. If you're going to be watching us on live, you can leave questions at that time. And we're going to ask the Judge or any of our other panelists anything that you have to say. But right now, Judge, I'm going to let you close the show. That camera's all yours. You can say whatever you want and take as long as you want to do it.
We have an election coming up November 2nd?
Yep.
November 2nd. You still have time to register to vote. Then once you get registered to vote, ask some people about people who are running so you can vote intelligently. Don't believe the newspapers. Talk to people like Ken Dow. Talk to people who've been actively involved in this community so you can know who has your best interests at heart. Don't be voting for people because they went to your church or because they spoke to you nice one day last month. Get to know their political background, look at their social media, find out what their positions are on various and sundry issues, and to get educated, and make sure you take somebody with you. To my brothers out there, don't be afraid to speak up. One of the issues when I was in college, I was pretty radical, and I believed in black power, Pan-Africanism. I believed in that. And I used to have friends ridicule and say, oh, yeah, you weekend radicals talking like that junk. Now all of them are now looking to us for leadership. So take your position, develop your position, develop some skills about your delivery, but step out there and speak up on these issues and speak up on them from an intelligent, organized fashion. We need you to step up into those leadership roles, black men. We need you to apply for some of these agency jobs that are out here because you understand what we need, and we need you in the room.
Thanks again, Judge, for coming out. Make sure you tune in to our next episode. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.